Hello everyone, my name is Salvatore Di Costanzo. I'm an elder law attorney and an estate planning attorney here in Westchester County with offices in Rye and Yorktown Heights. It's good to be back today, and we're continuing our bi-weekly Facebook live chat series. So we've been speaking lately about different changes or changes in the law that are upcoming. And I talked in the last couple of sessions about the new Medicaid laws. We talked about using trust to try to defeat the new look-back period that's going to be happening October 1st. And I think that's been well received. We've got a lot of people contacting us to draft trusts and to move assets before October 1st. And while it's making us, very busy, we're happy to be able to accommodate as many people as we can. So I hope that if you have not heard these videos, if you've not watched these videos, go back onto my website and take a look at them. They're very useful. It's very good information, and I think you're going to find that you might want to act. So today I thought I just change gears just a little bit. We were going to repeat in one of the seminars that we've already done this year, early on in the beginning of the pandemic, about how you really need to get your affairs in order given the circumstances. And then we decided that one of the offshoots of that is that people have been coming in to do their estate planning, and there's things that need to be done after you've actually sat down with me to do your estate planning. And I think this is really important because I'm seeing this with, a lot of frequency, quite frankly, where it's not always my clients, but it could be somebody that's drafted documents with another attorney, and then I get a chance to see those people, and they haven't finished the estate plan. And a lot of people think that once you come into my office and you sign your documents, you're done. And in some cases that may be true, but in a lot of cases there are a lot of open items that still need to be attended to, and they're not tasks that are generally tasks of the attorney, if you would. There are obligations that you have, and if you don't attend to those obligations, you're leaving your estate plan in a somewhat state of flux, if you will. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about some of the things that come to my mind. And interestingly enough, I received a couple of calls this week from existing clients on topics that I'm about to discuss. So I think it's ripe for discussion. So let's say you drafted a last will and testament, and perhaps you set up a trust for minor children, right? This is very common. Almost all of my documents set up trust for minor children. Why do we do that? Well, if you have minor children, you don't want to leave assets to those minor children outright. The right way to do it is to set up a trust. But let's say your children are adults. You may have grandchildren that are minors. And if, God forbid, your child predeceases you, their share passes to their children. And again, we want to be in a position where those assets are in a trust. We really don't want minors to come into assets. There's a lot of complexity involved with that, and it's just not a good idea from the management perspective. Well, after you drafted your last will and testament, you should be mindful of changing your beneficiary designations. So let's say you have an IRA or a life insurance policy that you want to leave to the children who are minors. We want to redirect that beneficiary designation of, let's use a life insurance because it's less complicated, of a life insurance policy. We want to make sure that those assets pass into the trust under the terms of your will. You may have a life insurance policy with a beneficiary designation that says my spouse and then my issue, meaning my descendants. Doesn't say anything about a trust. So we need to customize a beneficiary designation form So that way those assets pass into the trust that we created under the terms of your will. And a lot of people don't do that. A lot of attorneys don't even talk to their clients about that. So what you have is a disconnect in the estate plan. You end up with a will that sets up certain provisions. It could be a trust. It could be a trust for a minor child. It could be a trust for a disabled person. It could be a trust for tax planning purposes. There's a lot of reasons why we might be using trust. But if you don't take the necessary steps after you sign your last will and testament to look at your beneficiary designated assets and make sure that they jive with your will, then you know we're gonna have a problem. So what happens is, God forbid you pass, and your IRA and your life insurance might end up in the hands of a minor or a disabled person. And it's not going to go under the terms of your will. It doesn't automatically happen. A lot of people think that these things automatically happen. That's not the case. You got to go do it, right? So that's a big one, right? And you should be checking your beneficiary designations even if you didn't set up anything special in your last will and testament, right? Let's say you set up a trust. Let's say you did a revocable trust. Let's start with that. A revocable trust is very important and necessary to avoid probate. And we're not going to talk about that today. We've talked about it already. But what needs to happen after you set up a revocable trust? Well, in order for a revocable trust to work, you need to move your assets into the revocable trust. So I just had clients here half an hour ago that came back to me and said, Sal, I know we signed our trust recently, but we want to go over again what has to happen as far as setting up the accounts in the trust. And I was very glad that they came in to speak to me about this. Because a lot of people, again, they sign their trust, they go on their way, they forget about it. Let's say you have a Fidelity brokerage account. After you set up a revocable trust, you have to actually go to Fidelity and open up an account inside the revocable trust and move your existing Fidelity account that's in your individual name to the revocable trust. That's what it means when we say put your assets into your revocable trust. And that's very important, because if you don't do that and you die, you may end up probating those assets, which is the whole reason why we drafted the revocable trust to begin with, right? We're trying to avoid probate. So it's very important to put together a list of your assets and then go see your bank or your financial advisor and work to make sure that those assets have been moved into your trust, or perhaps they have beneficiary designations, and we've already talked about that. But we want to avoid probate. And those are the things that you need to do. You need to look at those accounts and make sure that they are properly titled or they have the proper designations upon your death. We see a lot of revocable trusts that are not implemented properly, and we end up having to administer a revocable trust and probate your estate, because there are assets inside your trust and assets outside your trust. So we don't want that to happen. Let's say you set up a trust, whether it's revocable or irrevocable, and you put your house into the trust. One of the things that we want you to do is contact your insurance company who's got the homeowner's insurance policy. We want to make sure that there's never an issue with an insurable interest. And most of the time, I don't see this being an issue. But depending on the insurance company that you use, you might have to put a rider on the policy, naming the trust, right? Sometimes the insurance company wants to rewrite the policy. Often the insurance doesn't raise, the premium doesn't go up, but it could. I've seen cases where it's increased. But that's a very important technique. We want to make sure that you contact your insurance carrier to let them know that you did something with your house, and make sure that the insurance is sufficient. I mentioned before meeting with your financial advisor. That's very important. You don't want to keep your accountant and your financial advisor in the dark. We try to bring in the financial advisors and the accountants so that way they're not surprised to hear that you did your estate plan. But if they're not part of the planning process, you really want to make an effort to meet with your professionals, sit down with them, and review what has been done. There's always something that needs to be changed on their end. If it's a tax return, the accountant should be aware of the different 1099s that you might be getting next year. If it's your financial advisor may want to fill out separate types of forms, which leads me to something else. We will probably be drafting a power of attorney for you, right? One of the action items that I want you to take after you've worked with us is to go to your financial institutions and fill out their form of a power of attorney. I also want you to take the power of attorney that I drafted and give it to them so they have it on record. So you're doubling up. They've got a copy of your New York State form of a power of attorney, but they may have their own internal power of attorney. And I don't want you to run into a situation where you lose your capacity and somebody is trying to handle your financial affairs and they go to the bank and the bank says, no, we're not going to accept the New York State form of a power of attorney, which by the way is wrong. They're obligated to accept it in most cases. But banks do this. And rather than have that argument with the bank, it's good to go to the bank and fill out their form of a power of attorney. So this is very, very useful information. Extremely useful information. From a healthcare perspective, I want you to be able to go to your doctor and give them a copy of your healthcare proxy. So you can make multiple copies of your healthcare proxy and you can disseminate it to as many people as you want. You should have it, depending on how many doctors you have, you should give everybody a copy of your healthcare proxy. These are all items that we're discussing that I can't do for you, right? I can't go to your doctor and give him or her your healthcare proxy. These are all items that need to be done after your estate plan is completed and need to be done by you. Let's say you set up, and I'm jumping around, so forgive me, but it's sort of easy to do it this way. Let's say you set up a revocable trust. Well, one of the things that people are doing today that seems to be making more and more sense is they're transferring the title to their motor vehicles to the trust. So I happen to know somebody whose husband just passed away, and he had several cars in his name. We're going to need to probate his estate because of those cars. If we would have set up a revocable trust and transferred title to these automobiles to the trust, we could have avoided probate. So, motor vehicle, based on my knowledge, allows a husband and wife to transfer one motor vehicle upon the death of the other. So, if husband passes away and he's got a car in his name, by going to motor vehicle and filling out some paperwork, I believe they will allow you to transfer, and there's forms on the internet that you can get to do this. They'll allow you to transfer the motor vehicle to the spouse. But if there's multiple cars, you're going to need to probate, right? So it's a good idea to consider. It doesn't happen all the time, and it doesn't have to happen in every case. But depending on what your estate looks like, you may want to consider transferring your motor vehicle to the revocable trust. And by the way, motor vehicle, I think they're still closed right now, so it's somewhat of a process to deal with motor vehicle because you need to drop things off and work through the mail. And so be mindful of that. It might take quite some time to accomplish those things. So these are some of the major things that we see on a regular basis where people have drafted an estate plan and need to wrap things up. In other words, we title this "Finish the Job." And if you don't finish the job, then you're really not doing your estate plan the way it needs to be drafted, right? You're leaving a lot to be desired. Another thing that comes up, not too frequently, but it's a good thing to think about, and this is generally for our aged clients. You might want to consider prepaying or pre-planning your funeral. It's not something I can do for you. I can introduce you to the funeral directors in the area, but you might want to do that as one of the last pieces or the last items of a complete estate plan. And you may be somebody that has drafted a form that appoints an agent to handle your burial remains. We don't do this too often, but sometimes it's very applicable where people have unique wishes. For instance, you may want to be cremated. You may want to donate your organs. I had a client I still have this client who has pets and want to be buried with his pets at a pet cemetery, which they allow that to happen. So we drafted these forms to appoint an agent to carry out those wishes, to make those decisions. If you've done that, it might be a good idea to give that to the funeral director of your choice, the funeral director that perhaps you prepaid your funeral, you pre-planned your funeral. It's in most cases it might be the funeral home that your family has been working with for generations. But it would be good to give that to them so that way they have that in their files, so that way upon your death, when they carry out your funeral arrangements, they can share that with your agent, or remind your family members of your wishes, et cetera, et cetera. So that's something that you might want to consider doing. So these are the items that we see on a regular basis. The final thing that I'd like to make a recommendation on is for you to put together excuse me, a statement of net worth. It's a good idea to bring all of your personal affairs into one place. You should prepare, maybe using an Excel spreadsheet, a statement of net worth that says, these are my bank accounts, these are my brokerage accounts, this is my mortgage, these are all my other, debts and liabilities. You might have life insurance policies that you put on that list, annuities. You might want to put the information for your burial arrangements. You might own plots. I happen to be a Giants season ticket holder, so I have all of my Giants account information on there, which is probably going to be worthless if the Giants don't turn things around. But stuff like that, things that people really need to have access to. The other thing, in addition to a statement of net worth, you should prepare some sort of schedule of all your usernames and passwords. And share this with somebody who's trusted in your family, right? So one of the things that I do on a personal basis is I prepare all this on a quarterly basis when my statements come in the mail. And then I put everything on a flash drive. And I share that flash drive with a person that I trust who's going to be administering my estate someday, hopefully. And that way, it's preserved, it's backed up, and you're not going to be in a situation where your children or your spouse are running around like chickens without a head trying to figure out what you had so they can administer your estate. So these are really, really important items. Some of my clients also make a list of all of their physicians. So you would say, my general practitioner is this guy, and here's his phone number, and my gynecologist is this woman, and here's the phone number, and here's my insurance carrier, and here's the account number for all of that, and keep going down the list. Here's my attorney, here's my accountant, here's my financial advisor. Those 3 schedules can make the administration of your estate nearly seamless. A lot of the big cases that we have going on in the office are because people didn't take the time to put their affairs in order. And a lot of people come to me and they say, Sal, I want to put my affairs in order. And they think it's just drafting a document, a will, or power of attorney, or health care. Putting your affairs in order is finishing the job. You come to me, we do step 1. You got to do steps 2 and 3 on your own. And if you do these things, if you do all these things that I just discussed, then you've got a complete and accurate estate plan, which, by the way, should be reviewed every few years because things change. So I hope that was useful. I know it's beneficial. Please pay attention to these things. And I know tomorrow is September 11th, and I want to extend my thoughts and my prayers for all of those who've lost somebody because of September 11th. Not only those who lost loved ones, at the towers that day, but all the people who have passed on or become ill after the fact, who gave their time, their energy to help clean up the situation. I was down at Ernst & Young that day, which I can't believe that next year will be 20 years. And fortunately for me, I was in Midtown Manhattan, and I could see what was going on, and it was a very helpless feeling because you couldn't do anything about it, right? And I've had a lot of clients that have come to me to do their tax returns. Through back then when it all happened, it was a program that Ernst & Young had implemented to help people. And I, to this day, still have one particular client who I'm very fond of, whose husband was a firefighter. And I've been doing her tax returns for 20 years. And I watched her family grow, her daughters, post-tragedy, grow up, go to college, and actually they're my clients now too. And I don't think she'll be watching this, but if you are, you know who you are, and I'm thinking about you. So again, thank you to all those 9/11 responders, and my sympathies to everybody that has been tragically affected by September 11th. Today's also the first day in many cases for school, and it's a very tough year, and I want to wish everybody the best for this upcoming school year. It's different, it's challenging, but I know that you can do this with no problem. And so to all the young kids out there, this is kind of scary. To the high schoolers who are going into their senior year, make the best of it, and it should be a memory that you'll never forget in more ways than one. And to all the teachers out there, I know from a personal perspective how difficult it is to teach. I can't imagine what it would be like if somebody took away my drafting documents and said, now do this now do what you do for people, and my tools and resources were not available to me. So that's in essence what's happening to you guys, and I want to give you my thoughts and my prayers, and I hope that you guys can find the wisdom to be able to teach our students. So with all that being said, have a great day. I'll see you again in 2 weeks. I have no idea what the topic is going to be, and I think that's about it. Take care.